You're listening to Dumpster Diving with
Janice.
and Jane. And today
Woo,
we're
woo,
recording,
woo!
we hit our goal, everyone. 50 episodes by the end of the year. Woo!
Oh,
We're
Well,
doing
and
it right
even
now.
it was actually 50 from, it technically works out that it's the end of the year, but it was 50 from when we started.
But
So
we
we're
started in
coming up on,
January. So, like,
right, but
it's
was
before.
it, it's 2 years though, friend.
Yeah. Yeah.
2 years.
2 years.
So it is before, but we kind of said we're going to do 50 and then we'll see. Are we
Yeah.
going to keep going? What are we going to do, etc.? We'll let you know by the end of the episode what we've decided, by the way.
Yeah.
Who
We don't know
knows?
yet.
Who
Kind of
knows?
fighting. No, it's
uh,
just kidding.
Sure.
But for our 50th, we have the infamous JP Reynolds, our good friend JP. Woo, 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 woo. And the song that I'm going to sing for him, and I'm just going to sing one line of it because, I'm not a good singer, but the song of today is Reunited and it feels so good.
I
We
wish I
love
had
you,
a lighter.
JP. We love you so much. So
I love the song. Love the two of you. Love being here for your 50th. Wild congratulations. What an achievement. Uh,
right?
the, um, a lot of people say they're going to do something, and halfway through, they they give up.
Yeah.
And so props to the two of you.
Thank
Props to
you.
the two of you.
Yeah,
Thank you. And
thank
oh my
you.
God, Jane wanted to give up so much. And I was like,
I did.
no,
Yeah.
let's,
You can't
yeah.
let JP down. Don't do
No,
this.
we got to get to 50. And it was what I love about it is as we were thinking about 50, because the people who listen to us on the regular know that we don't have like a content map from week one of a year to the week. Like so
Yeah.
much of this is us in real life, like in the moment. These are the things that make sense to us and are important. But for 50th, we were like, okay, the 50th is going to come up fast. Like, and it was like, boom, we both went JP. Like there
Yeah.
was not even like a hesitation or what should we do? It was like JP.
Yeah.
So it's
Well,
so
you've been,
great to have you.
yeah,
I
and you've
am
been one
I
of our
am
biggest cheerleaders too. So it's been
Well,
a lot of fun.
I'm immensely flattered, and
Wow.
um, uh, and you know that I believe in what you've been doing because a couple of your guests I referred to you.
You
Yeah.
did
Oh, really? Yeah.
exactly, and we have loved
Meredith,
Right.
that.
yes.
Yep.
So, uh, yeah. Well, here we are,
And we want you to
minutes
keep
away from
going.
Thanksgiving.
The minute.
Minutes
We
away
really
from
are minutes. Yes.
Thanksgiving. Exactly. We're going into the holiday season, so it's like perfect timing. And I think that I was listening recently to, I don't know, a podcast. I can't tell you which one because there's so many of them, but the guy was talking about how important it is to pinpoint a focus for like to be able to look back and go 23 is the year I did this. 2024 is it, and it was different than the context of setting your goal, right? Like here's my goal but rather like this is this kind of purpose driven thing that I made sure to attend to, right? And it could be like the year I bought my house or it's the year I did this. And it made me really stop and think like just looking over the last 5 years, because I haven't intentionally said, this year I'm gonna blank, this year I'm gonna blank, right? And so I kind of panicked, not panicked, that's too strong a word, but I was kind of like, oh my gosh, like that's so powerful and it's so true. And it's such a great way to make sure that we don't just like wake up 5, 10 years later and kind of look back and go, I guess I just lived. Don't get me wrong, living's wonderful, but like, did I have an impact? Did I do anything of note for others? That kind of stuff.
Mhm.
But this podcast, like I was so excited because one of the things in that moment I was like, oh, this is the year we'll have hit 50. And we said we were going to do 50 episodes. 2024 is the year we hit 50. And it made me kind of go, okay, I did something.
Isn't that crazy?
So thank you, Jane, for being a part of me being able to say, oh, thank God. Thank God I did something. Is what it was.
Right.
But that's the thing. We do lots of things
I
and
know.
we don't keep track of them. But this was something that we actually had a timeline for and a mutually agreed upon goal. And we had that
Exactly.
one mission and we both did it.
Yep.
Like it's crazy to think all the things in
Exactly.
2024. Like this episode's going to be fun because talking about self-awareness and stuff like that. Like I think that I don't know about you guys, but I've learned a lot about
Yeah.
myself this year. A
Yep.
lot about
A
myself this
freaking men. A freaking
Mhm.
men.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
should we get into it? Should we get into our topic? So our you just said it, Jane, right? Like we really felt like this was a great time. And I love the caveat's perfect, Jane, like how much you've learned about yourself this year. I feel like I know I'm constantly learning. And of late we've had a couple of conversations about that. And so it led to a natural thing, a thought that why don't we focus on self-awareness? Is that like what is it exactly? What does it mean to us? And how do we develop it? So I'm hoping that we're going to be able to talk about it in terms of all three of our own contexts, and then also extend to think about how we help develop it in others, right? Which of course comes from the parenting stuff that we do and all of that. And I think like JP said, we're on the cusp of Thanksgiving, the New Year. It's a great time to have a reflection like that, right? So what I'll do, if it's okay with you guys, is I'm just going to kick us off with a definition, right? Like kind of a more, prescribed, if you will, definition. And then we'll just start with like, okay, so what does it mean to each of us? And what are the ways that we both internalize those ideas and then externalize those ideas, right? By sharing them with others. I told Jane when we were talking about this in our planning call, which sounds really official, but it's not, it's really not. It's one of those calls, look behind the screen. It's one of those calls where we're going to record and then we're like, we have a few episodes already saved up. We're good. And then we just start shooting the shit. And this came up.
I'm
But
impressed.
thank you,
Yeah.
thank you. So the book I've been reading is written by a gentleman who's a like a holistic medical doctor and some other things, Dr. Josh Axe, and it's called "Think This, Not That." And I picked it up because I feel like in the world we're in right now, right, we have to constantly be evaluating our own mindsets, lest we get caught up in being so extreme in our thinking that we can't hear other people, we can't include other people, etc. So in this book, it's like a set of mindset shifts. One of them is this idea of self-awareness, and he defines it, actually he carries forward the definition by Socrates, which is when we are self-aware, we understand what we feel, be it anger, sadness, fear, joy, and we can transform it into productive behavior. And that part for me was really important because in the work I do with schools and districts, often they talk about self-awareness in young people and how important it is to develop that, but they often stop at the understanding what you feel, and they don't think about the second part of it, which is being able to transform that feeling, no matter what it is, into productive behavior. So that's the starting point that I would put on the table for us in terms of a definition to center around. And then, yeah, open it up. What are you thinking?
So, well, if I may jump in here, I like that definition, and I'd like to tweak it. I think self-awareness is definitely about being aware of what you're feeling, being present, being in the moment, and then consciously choosing what to do with those feelings. Sometimes, though, I think it's legitimate to choose not productive behavior.
There's a
In the
message.
sense of, you know what? For the rest of the day, I'm not sure that I really am in the mood to forgive.
Mm-mm.
I'll deal with that tomorrow.
Sure.
Yeah.
Or consciously say, all right, this is unfair, and I feel like a victim, and I'm going to allow myself to feel like a victim for the rest of the day, and then tomorrow I'll go ahead.
Right.
The reason why I'm saying this is because for the work that I do, I strive to help people realize that it's a choice. It's a choice as to what I'm going to do with the feelings. And by having the agency to make a choice, you are saying, I'm not going to be a victim.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna make the other person out to be a villain. This is just what I'm doing with the feelings.
Yeah.
So that's my tweak of the definition.
I love both of those. And I'm going to tweak it just a little bit too, because it just so happens that, you both know that I'm working on building workshops, and, to our listeners, I'm up for hire. Um, workshops
Keep
and
it
stuff like
clean
that.
though, everybody. Keep it clean. Okay. When she says hire, she
I
means
mean,
workshops.
coaching.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just me. I'm just saying we have a lot of different kinds of listeners, Jane. You could get a lot of attention when you say
Well, who
words
are
like
your friends?
I'm out for
Like,
hire. Listen, we both know Rose.
uh,
Rose is, you just never know where she's going to go.
I'm
So
just going to stay in my little box.
Rose, your friends are questionable. Anyways, meaning Janice. So,
it's true.
so I happen to be working on a workshop about self-awareness and the 7 levels of energy. So I started off with consciousness, because consciousness is before self-awareness. You have to really be aware of who you really are, right? And it's more than just being self-aware of my emotions, but who you are, how you show up, all those things, right? So I think about those things, like who, what, and how, like who's influencing your beliefs, what are your roles in your life, and how do your roles and beliefs support or take away from your version of success, right? So because it's a self-evaluation when we're talking about self-awareness, and some people are so unself-aware that it's that you need to start somewhere. So for me, I go to the basics, right? But then self-awareness to me is the ability to recognize and understand your own thoughts, feelings, and actions, and then how they affect others, and the ability to recognize how others perceive you. Because your actions, energy, thoughts, feelings, and actions portray a certain perspective to other people, and we're not even thinking about that. We're thinking about us, right?
Yeah.
So self-awareness is really like remembering there's other people, and how are they reflecting, like what are they seeing?
Yeah.
How are you showing up for them? That's self-awareness to me. Like, because you can have all of the things going on and make the choices to hold it in and everything else, but what are you doing? Are you really taking the break, or are you being an asshole first, tearing things down, burning a bridge, and then going and saying, okay, I'm the victim, and meanwhile the city's burning down, right? So it's being aware and being able to stop yourself and then make that choice. So all of that together, I feel like is exactly what we're saying to each other, but in a little bit of a different way.
So you've added a very interesting and important third element to the definition that we're creating. And I'm reminded of in my class at UCLA Extension on business communication, just last week, this young woman from Germany, not that that really means anything, but she's here as an exchange student. So she's caught up in everything that an exchange student would be caught up in. And she was talking about how she's shy because she worries about what people will think of her. And she's concerned that if she speaks up and it is the wrong thing, that people think she is stupid. And she used the word stupid.
Wow.
And what she said, I mean, how many of us have said that? I mean, it's she is not unique in that fear. However, what was most interesting in the conversation was at the end, this fellow in the class who is probably, I would guess, 40, an attorney, and he turned and he's one of these people that it's hard to get a read on him, and he's not always forthcoming in conversation. So I was surprised when he just turned to her and he said, just for the record, you present yourself in a way that says to me, you are wonderfully intelligent. And he said, I wish I spoke German as well as you speak English.
Wow.
And she looked at him like he had just handed her a winning lottery ticket.
Right.
Wow.
And her response was, really? And so that element that you just set down of being aware the impact and how you being aware of how you're presenting yourself, being aware of how the impact of how you're presenting yourself. That's a very interesting dimension because it's not simply, oh, am I being, the a-hole here? It's also, oh, am I telling myself a lie about me?
That's right.
This young woman does. And I said to her, I said, the next time you tell yourself that you're not allowed to speak because you're going to sound stupid,
Mm.
I hope you remember what Sergio just told you,
Right.
because I don't know this man very well, but what I do know is he has a very low tolerance for BS.
Yeah.
Right.
I
And
Right.
love
he just burst out laughing. And
Yeah.
he said, well, maybe you know me better than you think.
that.
You're like, I've got your number, dude.
That's right. That's right. That perception, I think, is so important, how we're perceived, right? And to the point you just made, JP, right? It's if we're not thinking about that, then we're operating on a set of assumptions, right? That that can really be misleading to us, right? And so it makes me wonder, in the example you just offered, that young man was kind enough himself to say out loud to her, and give her that right gift, really, of that perspective or that perception he has of her. And but when we don't, right? Like I used to even now when I coach leaders, one of the things we talk about is who are the people around you you've given permission to tell you the truth. And I just feel like, if because especially in that role, right? If you don't say to a couple of people, and it can't be, you can blanket and tell everybody, and that's the same as saying my door is always open, right? But
Right.
when you actually privately say, JP, listen, um, I have in my head what I think people are thinking and how people are perceiving me, but I know that that's not 100% accurate. It's filtered by me, right? So I would really be grateful if you would, if here's what I intend to do. Anytime I'm outside the bounds, please tell me, right? Please be a person who comes and tells me. And if you don't do that, then it's being intentional about what you just said, because otherwise you're either doing one of two things. You're just assuming everything in your own head is the actual perception that everybody has, or you are well, I guess maybe no. I'm just going to leave it at that. That's it. You're basically walking around just making that assumption. Some people, by the way, like that, right? Like I'd much rather land where I think I am and then be off the hook for anything negative that maybe I am creating than to have to face those things.
Right. So, in listening to us, I am listening. In listening to us, um, what I find intriguing is that this definition, I think oftentimes when people hear the phrase, the word self-awareness, they think about being interior oriented, that
Mhm.
it's that looking inside, that it's about me being with me. But really, what we're talking about here is the whole purpose of self-awareness is so that you can be outward, so
Mhm.
you can be
That's it.
engaged.
Yes.
Without the engagement, then you really are not self-aware. You're something, but without engagement, self-awareness is, I don't know what I'd call it, but there's got to be that it has to be outward driven.
Yeah, that's right. It has to be both, right? It has to be being thoughtful, understanding, like, and you said this, Jane, and I noted it because it was alongside of one of the other definitions I looked at, which is, understanding your own goals, personality, strengths, weaknesses. It's that part, and because yes, if you don't get the outward part, then it's stunted, right? It really is stunted.
Yeah. Well, I think that I mean, in the way that it's just so fresh on my mind because it's, well, I have my presentation up too, but like, because I've been working on this, and my whole thing is like, without self-awareness, you cannot be emotionally intelligent.
Yes.
That's the segue into having emotional intelligence and great emotional intelligence. If you're unaware of how you show up every day and how you affect people around you and how the people around you affect you, there's no way that you could ever be emotionally intelligent fully. Because
Exactly.
the definition of emotionally intelligent is the ability to understand, use, manage your own emotions, as well as understand and influence the emotions of others.
Yep.
So, because in order to have emotional intelligence and to be that leader, you have to lead with that emotion. And that's what
That's
people
right.
forget, is that leadership is all emotion. It's all how you make people feel. It's how you speak to them. It's how you mentor them. It's how you lift them up. It's how you speak about them in rooms that they're not in. It's about all of that. And so without that self-awareness and how you're showing up and presenting and supporting the people around you, that emotional intelligence is just unattainable.
Yeah.
So it occurred to me, really then the divide is self-awareness versus self-obsession.
Ah,
Ooh.
mm-hmm. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. I
Is
like
that a hint? Do you feel like he's hinting at
all of you, those
Wait a
self-absorbed
minute.
people out
Yeah.
there.
Wait a minute.
Because my student was this young woman. She would, when she was self-obsessed, she silenced herself.
Right.
Oh,
And when she
nice.
was
When
not,
she became self-aware,
aha.
she has begun to practice speaking up in class.
Very nice. I like it. I like the
That is such a
Yeah.
great, I love that you put it forward that way. What a great, to use her, right, as that
yeah.
example and to be able
Yeah.
to use her to show both sides of that. I love that. That's so powerful.
You know what gets me though is like the guy that's the low BS tolerance guy. How self-aware and emotionally intelligent was he for to speak up in that moment?
Oh, yeah.
Because he could have just sat there. He
Right.
could have just sat there, JP,
Yep.
and he created that self-awareness for her. How what a gift, you know?
Okay. So let's hold hands and have a moment of Zen.
Kumbaya, my love. Kumbaya. Sorry.
Because I what you said, absolutely true. It was it was so gracious what he did. I was stunned because
Right.
he never at any point in time during these last 6, 7 weeks given any indication that he was willing to offer that kind of a graciousness to anyone.
Right.
And here's the thing, and this is our moment of Zen. This is where we are all, oh, to use my word, wackadoo, where we are so contorted and complicate our lives because I am not convinced that the graciousness he showed her is the graciousness he's showing himself.
Yeah.
Right.
And I don't want to get into like the personality dynamics of my students here. However, he has thrown up a lot of resistance,
Sure.
what I have been offering in the class. A lot of resistance. And so this is, I think when we talk about self-awareness and emotional intelligence, and we talk about all the good things that you have been talking about for 50 episodes now, there's always that tendency to think, well, okay, I want the 6 easy steps.
Mm-hmm.
And as the three of us know, and I think as most likely your listeners know, there are no 6 easy steps.
That's right.
And so the to be gracious in this moment and to be resistant in that moment. And that's the struggle.
Yeah.
To increase the gracious moments and ease the power of the non-gracious moments.
Right.
And I think at the core of all of that is intentionality.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, I just feel like, because to your point, JP, yes, like you said, if people have taken away anything from 50 episodes, it should be that there are no step-by-step guides, right? But it's kind of, knowing who you are and or who you want to be, and then every day being intentional about it. Like it doesn't happen accidentally. It just doesn't. That's the truth, right? And so every day being intentional about it. Yeah,
Yes.
it's
Yes.
messy,
Yes. And
you know?
my work is guided by the belief that we all do what we do and say what we say for a reason. And there is no change, there's no development, there's no evolution, there's no growth without understanding why you do what you do and say what you say.
Yeah.
And what I find fascinating, among other adjectives, is that how many people are surprised by the inward nature of the course. It's called the dynamics of interpersonal communication. People come looking for the 6 easy steps.
Mm-hmm.
And inevitably, two things happen. One of two things happen. Either someone will at some point in time say to me, wow, I didn't think I was going to think about myself as much as I am in this class.
Mm-hmm.
Or I've had people come up to me before they drop the class and say, you know, you're interesting guy, interesting class. I'm really not interested in looking at myself. I came.
Self-awareness right there.
There you go.
Yes, yes. It is.
Amen.
I was hoping you would tell me what I should do.
I didn't know it
Yep.
was going to be work.
I don't want to do the reflection papers. I don't want to figure out what's my relationship to any of this. Just tell me what to do. I'm busy. I'm busy. I'm too busy to do whatever. And you know, which and I raised that because what I have struggled with is, you know, how do you go about becoming self-aware if you have minimal history of being invited to be self-aware?
Right.
That's exactly right.
You know, that brings me to when I first started coaching. I mean, let me just say this. Us coaches, we're like, you know, we're natural coaches. We've been coaching our whole lives in
right.
different ways, and we didn't know how, but somebody saw something in us that was like, hold on, like you have a gift of sorts, and I think you can use it. So when I first started coaching, it was for business coaching. But I had an epiphany at that moment because we had a coach that came in that was like, you know, she was a life coach, and she was our director of operations, and she was there to help coach and stuff like that. But you know, her her mindset, I was like, how am I going to tell people, like, how am I going to motivate people? How am I going to do all these things when I can't even motivate myself? Like, I don't believe that I can do this, you know? And that was my moment of self-awareness. Like, who the hell do you think you are? You know, like, how are you going to do this? And I mean, the business side of it, I knew it was no problem, but it was like that heart side. And I was just like, I don't, I, I can't even do this for myself. So I had to go, okay, I'm my first client. I'm my first life coach client. And I had to go and do these exercises. And when we were doing workshops, sales workshops, and that were 3 days long, I would go and like study my boss, study my mentor. What were the stories he was telling? What feelings was he pulling out of the people? What was the energy? Why did he tell that story? And then I ended up writing the coaching training for all the new coaches because I spent that time. It was like I was like, this is my time and this is where I need to do it because I'll never have this opportunity again. And I had control over my own schedule. And so I dove in, and the self-awareness that I gained in that year that I went to every single boot camp. I was teaching boot camps by the end of the year. I was helping him. Like I became his assistant. I became his go-to person to throw in, and I need a break, you know? So I ended up learning all of that. But because of that self-awareness, and like, I didn't think I could do that. I had to shift gears. And that's when I started creating my own self-awareness and like that level, you know? So you never know when it's going to hit you. And so your people coming into the class, it wasn't their moment. They're not hearing it. They're not seeing what they need to see.
Right.
Yep.
And you know, I'm 30 something and I'm learning all this stuff at that moment in time. And I was like, thank God. I didn't even know this about myself. I didn't know how I was showing up. I didn't know, you know, and we're still learning things about ourselves. I've learned a ton this year, but that was that catalyst for me, you know, and needing to know and being self-aware.
Right.
Well, and I think that, you know, it ties into this idea, and I want to say it was a want to say it was a book by Adam Grant, and now I can't remember which one, but he talks about like the smartest people are the people who are constantly trying to prove themselves wrong. And it's a similar thing here,
Yeah.
right? Like the most self-aware people are the people who are constantly and consistently doing that outward piece that you talked about, JP, and that you're talking about, Jane, right? Like that constant intentionality and never walking around letting assumptions be what drive their thinking, right? But are kind of inherently saying, maybe I'm being, let me check this, right? Because my intention is to be blank, but let me check it to make sure. And we've all had those people we work with who aren't particularly self-aware or are happy to make people around them miserable. One of those two things is true, right? And I often wonder, like, if do you realize you're doing this to people, or is it an accident? And I always try to come at it from the idea. I always try to assume the best of people, right? So I'm assuming you don't intend to, but then again, if you're not giving people permission to say out loud, right, that this is happening or they're experiencing this or that, then in the end, it's, I don't know. I guess what I hope people take away from this conversation is that if you're not intentional about both pieces that we're talking about the inward and the outward,
Yep.
then you're not in fact self-aware, right? You're not in fact
Totally.
like kind of bringing your best self to the people
Yeah.
around you. Yeah.
I just jump onto that. Like people use that as a defense mechanism.
Yeah.
Like they're being unself-aware. Like, well, I didn't know it did that, and when I think they are. I think they are aware, and it's just a defense mechanism. Like you did that.
Right.
You knew what you were doing.
Yeah.
Like you are self-aware. You did that intentionally. So let's just say that you did it intentionally, and why? Instead of I didn't know. No, you did. You
Yeah.
did. So
And
it's
exploring the why, right? I
yeah, the
think
why.
exploring the why is the huge part there. Yeah. Yeah.
Right, right,
Absolutely.
right. I'm smiling here because, oh, as always, coming on your podcast, it's always so nice. But then there comes a point in the podcast, and I've reached that point right now where it's like, oh, this should be a pajama party
I
because
know.
it's like, okay, yeah, there's just so it's that that notion of do people realize what they're doing? And I laughed because Janice, you're such a lovely person. You said to think the best of people. I, as the jaded New Yorker, right? And I haven't lived in New York for my life, but it's like, oh, for God's sake, girl. What do you mean
They're
the best
doing.
of people?
I know it's true though.
And I'm thinking, I
True.
hear my mother screaming in my head or in my head screaming at you. It's like, oh, don't be a fool. But then you added that piece that's interesting, Jane, where it's that sense of, if you confront them, it's like, you know, and I think I wonder if part of it is this, that when somebody does something that generates positivity, when somebody is gracious, there have been occasions where I've said, well, something along the lines of how lovely, what prompted you to say that or do that?
Love that.
And the person will say to me, oh, I don't know, I just did it. I don't know why. Well, I think that while it's true that people can be gracious and positive generating and still not know why, I think people can generate negativity and also not know why.
Absolutely.
Because we are, I was going to say lazy, but I'll pull back the word. We are untrained in understanding our why.
Yeah.
No matter whether the why is generating positivity or generating negativity.
Right. Well, but I also, which I think leads to my whole like, I like to assume the best about people, which it doesn't mean that I'm naively going, oh, I'm sure, he didn't mean to, or she, but more of like, you know, the assumption I think I make is that people show up in general in the best form they have.
Yes.
And that most people, and I shouldn't say even most, many, if not most people, don't intend to cause negativity in the people around them on a day-to-day basis. And if they're doing it, maybe they don't realize it. That's what I mean by that. Now, I know there are some people who do. Some people thrive on making other people feel like crap. Like we all can name a few, right? But in general, I like to assume, okay, so, and it ties back to when I was a school principal, right? My joke would be on both sides. Um, every parent out there is sending us the best they've got. They're not keeping their good children at home, right? They're sending us the best they've got. Every
All they got.
teacher, I do inherently believe that every teacher shows up wanting to do the best by kids every single day. I don't believe, and maybe there's the rare exception, that there's a teacher out there who shows up thinking, I can't wait to screw this up for these kids today. And so then for us as leaders, it becomes inherently our responsibility to help create the conditions to ensure that those kids that showed up from those parents who sent us their best
Are getting
can
the best.
can thrive. And likewise for the adults, right? So that's what I mean when I say I kind of assume the best of folks. But I think that, it becomes then about how we lean into, or the last part you said, JP, made me think that I wonder how much of a lack of self-awareness can be tied to the fact that as a society, to use that really big term, we are more focused on the me than we've ever been before. We are less focused on the idea of community collectively than we've ever been before, right? We live in a time right now where we are so focused on getting what I can get for me and mine. What can I get for me? How do I make sure we're safe? How do I make sure? And less focused on the sense of community, right? Like when you think about, and I know enough to be dangerous about history, so I'm not pretending to be a historian, but in generally speaking, right, early on in our history, we thrived in community. We understood that the more of us there were, the safer we were, right? Like we have to take care of the group, and the group is what's going to keep us safe. I feel like now, and again, I'm speaking in real big generalities. I know plenty of people who feel differently, but there's less of an emphasis on the we and more of an emphasis on the me. And because of that, and I'm chicken before the egg, right? Does a lack of self-awareness lead to that? Is it that because of that we don't necessarily really have to focus on the self-awareness? I don't know. And now I feel like I'm going off into
Well, it goes again back to what I said of self-awareness versus self-obsession.
yes.
And so there is
That's it.
this I think the most defining experience in my life was when I had the great opportunity to live in the South Pacific for 3 years. And I lived
Yeah.
on an island
Remember that.
700 miles south of Guam, the Chuk Lagoon. And the great gift that they gave me was the gift of hospitality.
Mm.
It was the gift of being in the moment with the person in front of you. And when I would visit, it was an island you could walk around in like 48 hours, and there
Right.
was no place else to go in 48 hours. But that sense of, I would go to somebody's home, I would go into a village. Now, granted, I was teaching at like this very treasured high school. So there was a certain respect accorded me because I was the teacher at this beloved high school. However, people stopped what they were doing and gave me their best food, the best mat, the best spot, the best coconut, and were with me.
Yeah.
And it has influenced all of my work. And I think that notion of, and appropriate that we're speaking of this as we barrel into Thanksgiving, that notion of being and seeing the person in front of you.
Yep.
And whether you are giving them 3 minutes of your time or 30 minutes of your time, that is that ability to look up from the phone and see the person by your side.
Yep.
I mean, the first night of class, everybody sat there before class started looking at their phones.
Yep.
It was like at the airport. And now, 7, 8 weeks later, people come into class, they sit down and they start talking.
Yep.
Because the person is no longer the stranger, no longer the other.
Yeah.
Right. This brings me to, and this is so current with everyone right now. But it made me think of me and my youngest daughter, Genevieve. Like, she and I were having a conversation, and she's very shy. She's very introverted. She had select mutism as a child. Like, she would not talk to anybody. She would talk through me. Like, there's a lot there, and so but she came to me, and she was like, I have friends, but I don't talk to them. And I go, why? I go, you enjoy their company, they talk to you. Most of her friends are very outgoing, and so they talk to her, so it makes it easier. And I said, well, what do your friends talk about? And she's like, nothing really. And I go, well, why? And she goes, I don't know how to have a conversation.
Wow.
What great self-awareness, first off.
Seriously.
And this was last year when she was 13. Now she's 14. But, she's like, I don't know how to have a conversation. And I said, you and I talk all the time. And she goes, but that's you and Chase. And I go, you know how to have a conversation. I said, what we need to teach you is how to start a conversation.
Yes.
And, so we're teaching her about icebreaker questions and open-ended questions versus closed-ended questions. Yep. And, and all the things. Thank God she has a coach. I mean, for a mom, like,
I know, right?
Let's go. We're in the car. I'm like, what are you talking about?
Let's do it.
But the self-awareness of our youth right now is huge. Like, I really do feel like our youth they're just so emotionally intelligent, how they talk.
Yep.
And that's through us.
Yes.
We may suck at it sometimes, but we're doing something right with our younger generation. And the fact that she felt confident enough or comfortable enough to even talk to me about it, but then be self-aware about it, and then try it and actually practice it with me and do those things. She's not out there speech and debate, but she's getting more comfortable, and she's paying more attention, and she's paying attention to how she's showing up and what she's doing and stuff like that. So, it brings it full circle to here we are, adults past our 40s, in our 40s and past, and learning how to do this when these young individuals in our homes already have it in them, and so it's like, so it's just bringing that awareness of everyone and just really working on it, because I learned a lot about how I show up this year, and learning about the ADHD and depression and stuff like that. There was things that I was doing that I had no idea was affecting people around me. There's things that I've done my whole life that this year I've tried to do and got called out on it. And I was like, like, I am so good at turning off my emotions and being a nice queen and just moving on. Like, I'm so good at that. That's survival, right? That's when it comes to romantic relationships, I am so good at that. But there's somebody in my life that called my ass out. And I was like, and they were like, look, I don't think you realize how that made me feel. And I was
there
like,
you go. Yeah. But I love that whole, like, they said, I don't think you realize you know it.
Right. And I did.
Right?
I did.
Versus assuming you were just being a biatch or whatever it was you were doing.
Or just being cold and shutting it down because I didn't have the capacity, and it was like, it didn't feel good, a survival mode, blah, 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 backing up, close that door. And they were like,
no.
Because normally.
But what an incredible gift.
Right?
Because, in my family, and my family is certainly not unique from all other New York Irish Catholic families, in that the the go-to protocol is someone pisses you off, uh, you banish them from your life.
Right. Right. Pretty much. Yeah.
And you don't tell them why they're being banished.
Right.
They're just banished.
Yeah. You're
It's
done. You're blocked. You're done.
The
You're
kids
everything.
call that ghosting, JP.
Ghosting. Yeah.
yes,
Ghosting.
yeah, yes.
You're ghosted.
It's we invented ghosting.
Ghosting.
We
Oh,
did.
sure.
They think they did, but they didn't.
It's called
Oh yeah, no.
ghosting.
I think my family were the origins of ghosting, but and ghosting makes it sound festive.
I'm
This
going to do a TikTok on this.
Yeah.
The history of ghosting. And I'm going to
Ghosting.
take it all the way back to the Reynolds
I
family.
will submit my family as coming here on the Mayflower of ghosting. Absolutely.
It was a ghost boat.
So, but props to whoever called you out, because
Oh,
that is an example of someone who is self-aware.
yeah. Yeah. He's very self-aware.
And it also shows that it's the hard path, right?
Yes.
Because you can imagine like that moment for him, where, because we've all been in that moment where like there's a pit in your stomach.
Yep.
It's incredibly stressful. Everything is saying in your brain is saying, don't say it, right? And then you just rip the Band-Aid off and you say it. And then
Yep.
it's like, oh, like what good can come from it? But it's risky because you could have also been like, and now I'm doubling down on that and see ya, right?
Yeah, you're blocked.
Exactly.
You know,
You're blocked.
But that was the
unfriend-
thing, is like
Yeah.
they were pushing, like, is this what you really want? And I was just like, just leave me alone right now. Like, give me a break. Well, and it was that push, and I was like, then yes, I'm done. Leave me
Yep.
alone. Yeah, I'm done. And then it was like the next day was like, whoa, like, well, but the fact of the matter is that I still answered the phone, and
That's
so
right.
I care about them, they care about me, and
Yep.
I'm really trying to work on myself in those aspects. Whether
Yeah.
it lasts a long time or not, I need to work on that on myself.
Yeah.
Because that is not a way to function, and I know that.
Okay.
And that's just been my go-to for several decades.
Yeah.
And at this
We
point,
talk about it all the time, just JP and I all the
Yeah.
time. Like,
Yeah.
oh my God, she's well.
hot mess. Like,
In our weekly
Hot,
calls that we
steamy
have
mess.
about you. Yeah. Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
I figured. So no, but that was it. It was a gift to me because I didn't realize how I was affecting
Absolutely.
them. And but with that awareness, it softened me a little bit in the aspect of like, okay, like I really need to not do that, and stuff like that. I mean, I've never done that to family, which is,
And understand why you do it. We've had a conversation about it. So
yeah,
I know
and
that
I do, and I do understand. And that was the big
that's
thing. I was like, like this is
Yeah.
why I'm doing it, and I told them that, and they understood, and blah blah blah, and we're still talking.
Well, and I want to pick on that because you kind of introduced with your conversations with Jenny and then this. So I want to tap into this idea of like how we help develop our own self-awareness and help other people in theirs, right? And again, oftentimes, right, exactly. We have this our parenting hats on with this, but it's not even just that. It's ourselves, it's others. And one of the, back in that original resource I mentioned at the top of the conversation, one of the studies he refers to is a study of 4 to 6-year-olds who were given a problem to tackle. Doesn't matter what it is, and they were put in 3 groups. And group 1 was just, here's the problem, do whatever you would do, right? Like go solve it. Group 2 was same thing, but they were told to be self-aware. Like literally told, like 4 to 6-year-olds, hey, we want you to go do blank and be self-aware, right? Which I thought was really funny. And then the third group was told to tackle the problem the way they thought their favorite superhero would.
Ooh, I like
so whether your superhero is Batman, Spider-Man,
whatever,
the princess from Beauty and the Beast, like whoever it is, tackle it like your favorite superhero would. And of course, shocker of all shockers, that group of kids like were 30+% more effective at tackling the problem. And what I loved about that was, as a parent, same thing. Like you tell me to, what it's important to develop self-awareness in your kid. Great.
Got it. How?
Right? Like what? Like, okay, so what does that look like? How do I do that? And I just loved this because I thought to myself, oh my gosh, whether you're 4 to 6, whether you're 6 to 10, at 12, 13, even right now, right? You could say to me, maybe it's not even my superhero, but it's somebody I admire, right? In my own head now, I can think to myself, how would blank do this? And yes, for all of our big, Christian population, I'm thinking about the WWJD bracelets,
Yeah,
right? That
right.
was such a thing for so long. If that's your go-to, let that be. Whatever your go-to is in terms of like that person, entity you admire, that because of the way they are received by the world, right? Not present themselves, but how they're received by the world around them. And I thought, oh my God, at any age, you can use that prompt to help develop your own self-awareness, because to be like them, you actually have to realize where you are
Yeah.
and then make the change, make the shift, make the you can't just, it's not in a vacuum, right? You actually have to understand where you are first, and then factor in those qualities from that person that you're emulating. So anyway, I feel like that's a really great way to start thinking about it when we think about supporting others, right? Whether you're coaching like you're talking about, whether you're even in your communications class at JP, I'm sure you have some suggestions as well. But anyway, that was my, like, I'm going to be grabbing onto that one for a long time. I just think it makes it so simple.
I love I'm thinking of my hero, but I love that because it's true. And so often people will come to me and ask, what should I do?
Mhm.
The most fundamental question, though, the question that needs to be asked first is essentially the question that you just raised, Jane, which is Janice, which is the question, who in this moment, who do I want to be?
Right.
And if you don't understand the who,
Yes,
you're not going to understand the what.
that's
Yep.
right.
And
That's
I think that's really the whole concept behind that experiment is, and if you know who you want to be, it will guide you in the choices you make in terms of how you
do it.
act.
Yeah.
That's it,
No,
right?
100%.
I
100%.
love
And I
that.
mean, I use a term with my business, like especially when I'm doing sales coaching,
Yeah.
is act your wage. Same thing.
Ooh,
What's the
yeah.
wage that you're shooting for? And what are the actions and the habits that those people that make that wage do? Because
Yeah.
that's what you're going to need to do in
Yeah.
order to get there. And so when you say it like that, they're like, oh, because that's the how. That's the how. What's
Yep.
the why? What are all the reasons why you want to make that money? Okay, family, you have hobbies, you want to send your kids to college, you want to do all these things. Okay, that's the why. And the how is that act
Yeah.
your wage. You have to have those habits, you have to have goals, all of those things. And honestly, like even setting goals creates self-awareness. What are you working towards?
That's right.
Most people don't even know what they're working towards, because there's two types of people. You're either going to exist or you're going to live life. You can exist all day long, but it takes effort to live, and it
Yeah.
takes effort to actually fulfill your life and hit those goals and everything else. So yeah, you can exist all day long. We all can exist. We can all sit here and exist, but we're not going to be living. And
Yeah.
so it's making that choice and being self-aware of, am I living or am I existing?
I love that. You guys.
So, Janice, I don't know, do we have a few minutes left?
Yeah.
Because something
Sure.
I want to say
Let's do it.
in terms of because I'm the guest, so I
Yes,
want
you get to
to
finish this
say
out.
a guest thought, and it is Thanksgiving, and I realized this as I was getting ready for the Zoom, and I don't think people understand. There's no reason why anybody would know this, that the three of us have never met in person,
I know.
Never.
and uh, again, let's hold hands and have a moment of Zen. The kind of conversation that we have had today, the kind of conversations that I've had, that I've been privileged to have with each of you and the two of you together in the last 50 episodes, is a gift, is remarkable. We can bash technology, even though everything I own begins with the letter I. But the idea that and it was you, Jane, who mentioned it to me the last time we spoke, of how we had never met in person, and it was like, no, wait a minute. No, we must have met in person. And then it's like, oh, no, wait a minute. Oh, no, we did. Oh, we met during the pandemic. Oh, no, no, we've never.
Never.
Janice, was Jane, as you know, who introduced us.
Yep.
And I think it's, well, first of all, as we approach Thanksgiving, I am thankful that somehow or other we met.
Amen.
My mind is way too foggy to
Right.
figure out how we ended up on the 50th episode together. It is that notion of you can be present in any way, shape, or form, or through any medium.
Amen.
Yep.
And it is the power of conversation.
Yes.
Because certainly for you and me, Jane, since you were my point of contact, it was in an arena of workshop, of conversation that we met. And Janice, we then continued on with conversation, and that is magic. That
Amen.
is power. And so for all of those of you listening, I hope you've made it to this point in the podcast to understand we are three random people in the universe,
Very much so.
and the two of you are celebrating Thanksgiving, but we're certainly at a point. For me, it's like the two of you could ask virtually anything of me, and it's like, oh yeah, of course, yeah, no problem.
Same.
100%.
And it's like, because I was saying to somebody that, oh, I'm doing a podcast on Sunday morning. They said, oh, and they said, well, how did you, like, how did they find you? Like, oh God, it's like, buy me a drink. So all of that, how lovely.
We
How
love
lovely.
we
do love you.
absolutely adore you. And and just to share some love too, like I was in like we met, you were doing UCLA, I was at SOLA, I was the coach for all of the 200 scholarship awardees and stuff like that. And when you came on, because they had a series of different coaches and you were the very last one, but one of the guys in the middle, older guy, like older white guy, and he said the most obscene things to the audience that we were serving that I had to call Yuri and go, never again. Like this guy was like racial things, stuff like that. And so the last thing, and you pop up and I'm like, oh dear God.
Are you saying because he was an older white guy also you made
Yes,
something?
I made an assumption.
Or is it that I'm from New York?
Yeah. I was like, oh dear God, please. And I was like, and he's doing confidence. I'm like, what the fuck? Like I was just dying on the inside. But as soon as you started talking, like I had the heart-shaped eyes and they were beating out. And I was like, I love this guy. Like at the end of the thing, I was like, he's gonna be my new best friend. Like he's going to be. And this is like, we're working on 5 years of knowing each other now.
Wow.
It'll be 4 years in January, I think. So we're almost on our 4-year anniversary, but no, I've enjoyed just knowing that you're there and I can give you a call whenever or send you an email and you'll set up an appointment, and you're just a huge light in my life, and I just absolutely adore you. And we're going to meet in person one of these days. So we need to do like a New Year's live one or something. I don't know.
Well, New Year's Eve at my house, I'm just saying, and the only fine point I'm going to put on is ditto all around in the shorter time, obviously, that we've known each other. But I think that JP, I love that you brought up the fact that we've never met in person, because I'm always we're in this trend right now. I feel like in my spaces where people are saying, oh my gosh, we need to be back, or now we need to be like nobody wants to do this anymore. Everybody's over this technology, over the, and we can't connect. That's the thing I take issue. We can't connect like we can. And every single time I'm the voice in the room who says, I'm going to have to beg to differ on that, because I have way too many experiences of connecting way too deeply. Do you have to think about how you do it? Yes. Does it have to be a little bit different? Yes. but can it be done? 100% it can be done. So if you're not connecting, I'm going to tell you, you can't blame it on the technology,
Yeah.
unless that's not the thing, right? And this is, like you said,
And,
living
and
proof of that.
exactly. And it's not the same. You're right. But you know what? I mean, Janice, you and I, like, we've seen each other a handful of times in the last 2 years.
Yep.
We've created a great bond,
Yep.
and JP, you and I, and even Janice, like, this is special. Like, I really do think it's special. And that's why you always come up, JP, because you have such great insight. And all three of us had great insight, and a little different, but that's what people need to hear, because not just one of us is going to have the same idea and then blast it out there and be like, this is the only idea. You got our listeners got 3 different versions of self-awareness.
Yep.
And leading into emotional intelligence and conversation. This is all one big package for you guys.
So the real question is, when they make the movie of the story of our lives, and they will, who's going to play JP? Just putting that out there. Nope.
Play JP.
I'll have to answer today, but we're just going to need to know that.
Meredith will film it.
I love it.
100%.
That's a family affair.
Count on that. Count on that.
We're not paying for filming. Come on.
Nobody else could tolerate it. I'm thinking
right.
Only
oh
one.
My God.
All right. Well, I hope you'll invite me for the 100th episode.
Oh, of course. And Meredith. We should bring Meredith on too,
Well, and so speaking of that, for the people who've been hanging on since the beginning of this conversation, as we wrap it up now, because I said at the beginning, and we're going to tell you what we've decided. Are we continuing? Aren't we continuing? You can rest easy.
We're going another
50 tonight.
Yeah.
We're going another 50. We haven't put a time on that yet, right? I think we're both smart enough not to say in the year, because we have both realized that our lives are too
There's
crazy.
Only 52 weeks in the year.
Only 52 weeks in the year. But that no matter how long it takes us, we're gonna do another 50. And so we're looking forward to all that brings, and all that can, all that it brings to us, and hopefully all that we bring to all of you who have been there since the beginning or are tagging into us now. And we're gonna get this episode up by Wednesday. Damn it, if it kills us all. In order for it to be there by Thanksgiving. And so, from us to you, thank you for being a part of the conversation and a part of this space with us. You have so many choices, and the fact that you make time for this is huge to us. So we are so grateful for you.
We love you all, and we're very grateful.
Yeah. Here.
Amen. Amen. Right. Peace out, everybody. Have a great Thanksgiving.
Yes. Thank you.